fat trade paperback, flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy,
Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight we are joined by Keith Grachow, my sketchy goodness, the good man, for something a little unconventional, a little different from what I normally do. So we're actually going to do a bit of chatting and drawing. So, Keith, we're going to throw up your Photoshop. I'll align us so we look a little nicer. And yeah, we're basically going to get going.
Good.
So, Keith, for the folks out there who've maybe never heard your face, or rather never heard your name, never seen your face, who are you?
I am a illustrator, graphic artist. I've been professionally in the business as a graphic artist for like 30, 40 years. As a comic book creator for the last 15 years, I guess. And I've been more recently doing workshops and teaching young people online. Essentially, I'm trying to pay it forward, I guess, in my later years, trying to make sure that the next generation is well equipped to deal with life as a creative in whatever endeavor they take upon themselves.
Beautiful. I dig it. I think that's a really good way to put it. And I gotta ask, what are we drawing just to start with?
Well, it seems like it's a person with like almost like an Al Pacino like hairdo. So what I'm doing right now is what I call my doodling, and it's something that whenever I'm teaching, I always start off doodling because it's a great way of warming up. And when you first start drawing, you just need to like get the eye-hand coordination loosened up. You need to get the mind free of any hang-ups, get the creative juices flowing. Doodling is a great way to do that. And you can really apply this. It doesn't have to be drawing per se. It could be writing. You can just like type whatever comes to your mind down. You have no idea what it's going to be. Let it go where it's going to go. And then sometimes you jar loose some great ideas or if you're stuck. It's the same thing. Drawing is a similar, when I doodle, it's a similar way of trying to just get things going. And I have no idea I honestly had no idea what this is going to be. The great thing about this brush that I'm using, which is from a company. Sorry, I'm starting to choke.
Okay.
I do have tea steeped.
Beauty.
So, okay. So, True Grit Supply, or True Grit Texture Supply is the name of the company, and they provide these amazing brushes for creatives digitally, and it's Procreate and Photoshop. And I think they also offer like textured paper and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
And I've played around with all their brushes, or a lot of them, over the years, and the one I'm using right now is called the Chisla. And if I were to blow up the size of, you can see it's like this kind of triangular, beauty kind of brush. When you start to just let it overlap, it creates some really fun shapes. And it just, for me, it's like taking like if you were to take like ink and just let it splash onto like watercolor paper, and the pulp of the paper kind of soaks it up in a really interesting way. That's what this brush does for me. It's, for some reason, it just opens up. I just see things in the shapes and that it creates, and I find that it really helps open up my creativity. But I mean, you can do the same thing if you take the side of a pencil and you're just playing around with whatever comes out of the side from the graphite. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that because I'm working digitally, I'm approaching this probably a little bit differently. So I'm just gonna draw over this and see. I'll do something different. But one of the other fun things about doing this is that I can reverse it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then see what shapes I get from that. So, I'm essentially taking like a black paper and adding white to it.
Yeah.
If I want to look at it that way. And then deciding how much white I want to add. I think part of what I like about this, the doodling aspect is just one aspect of it. But once I start to decide that I'm going to develop something a little bit further, what's really fun about this brush I use and this process I use with it is that I get to decide like how much white I want to add in there, or things like that. So it can create some really. It lets them. I think it lets the viewer do some more of the work, which is a really cool thing for somebody who's like, oh, I kind of see this in here, and my eyes kind of connecting the dots.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Just watching what you're doing here, I'm like, I've already seen a few things just popping through, and it's fascinating. I also did want to give a quick shout out to one Paul Kemp. We have our first comment. Paul, I have seen you floating around the net, and I love your stuff. He says, "Thank you for having Keith on the show. It's amazing to watch him work." Paul, I couldn't agree more.
So Paul and I are great friends. He's we have this thing going where every time I go to a show, he'll if he's there, he will commission me for a really fun sketch cover, and we've taken it upon ourselves to like now start doing themed sketch covers. So it's like I'm looking forward to this season of cons for that reason, because that means that I know that Paul and I have these really fun. We started it with we did Sandman, the 1930s character from DC.
Yeah.
And now I think the next one's going to be a Wonder Woman. So and they're all going to be like that kind of 30s golden age DC character, that kind of vibe. So anyway, yeah, Paul's a great person. I think are you guys going to be doing something as well at some point, or am I spoiling something here? Or?
No, not at all. I would actually like to. I have very much thought about it a lot because Paul keeps coming up in my feed, and I'm like, well, this is just a person I need to follow, check their stuff out, and have them on the show. So, Paul, how you doing? Now, okay, so for context for the people out there maybe watching, whether they're watching live with us now or sometime in the future, you're using Photoshop 2023.
Yep.
You're using a specific brush pack that you got. And what was the name of the pack again, or the style of brush?
Well, it's called, the company is called True Grit Texture Supply, I believe it's called. Chisla is part of their Rusty Nib pen set. I haven't really, there's really not any modifications I've done from that. I just pretty much use it straight out of their the way that they've designed it.
Okay.
And I have my workflow set up in a way. You can actually, I should probably save this before I forget.
Yes.
So you know.
I was gonna say, yeah. We don't need to see stuff we shouldn't be seeing there, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to see, but just my workflow, really.
Hundreds of pages of art and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily, it's just it's more like how I organize my my workflow files and all that kind of stuff. I'll be putting this under my daily illustrations.
Right on.
I will name this. What are we naming this? Let's just call this swamp. I feel like this is going to be a swamp. I've been drawing a lot of swamp stuff lately, as you can attest from our
Yes.
adventure in the Wayside Comics this past Saturday.
Yeah, good times. I've actually got that video finished, so I will be sending it through to, I guess, Howard, or would you like a copy as well?
Yeah, I think, whatever. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Sure.
Cool. For the folks at home watching, Keith and another gentleman named Howard Wong are offering a educational series on how to, in my words, I would say sort of creatively invest in yourself, create comics, create maybe storytelling would be better through art and writing. Keith, maybe you could articulate it a little better than I can.
We call it a comic creation workshop. It's for more or less a starting point for people that want to create something storytelling wise that they can use for, let's say, comics or animation or video games, right? It's
Cool.
creating worlds. It's knowing how to create characters within the worlds. It's figuring out the story elements behind those characters in the world that you're building, and that could turn into a comic book page. It can turn into some kind of storyboard for animation or a video game. I mean, you could use it if you're a writer that wants to write a screenplay and you want to know like the visual aspects of what something may look like. We teach very basic some basic drawing skills so that you can start doing the whatever it is you imagine you want to do without like having to have a lot of drawing background, right? So that's why it's great for young people. It's great for people that have never really been drawing before. It's great for people that were drawing years ago and may have stopped for a while. Now they're feeling really rusty and they want to get back into it. And I've had all different types do that, where they whatever they want to get out of it, they'll be able to apply what we're teaching them. And so Howard and I, we've worked together for decades now, and more recently we've been doing workshops together. I've been doing workshops independently. He's been doing workshops independently, and we're kind of joining forces where he's doing the writing side of the storytelling. I'm doing more the illustrative side of storytelling, but we're both creative people. He's able to visualize things really well. I write as well, so we can understand what each other does pretty solidly. Therefore, when we're teaching, we can kind of just keep on jumping back and forth.
Yeah, and I find from the lesson that I sort of filmed for you guys and was able to sit in on because of it. Yeah, you guys have a really good workflow together, which is really cool because I think you can get a lot out of it when you guys start riffing on sort of educating. Yeah, it was just a cool experience.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, I'm getting a lot out of it because I get to talk to and meet all different people in all different walks of life, and young people, especially, as I said earlier, being able to help the next generation to understand how to navigate the world of being a creative, how to value what you do, making sure that you understand some of the pitfalls and getting past your own insecurities to be able to keep on going, because a lot of it, I'd say majority of it is just getting out of your own way, and keeping on working on your skills, because I don't really put a whole lot into the idea of talent. I think talent's just a little minuscule part of it. I think it's mainly how much skill you're willing to build, and how you can work that into your life. How you, whether it's somebody who doesn't have a lot of time or a lot of means to be able to create, which is, it's very understandable. Being creative and artistic, thankfully, doesn't necessarily require you having a lot of money, although you do need to have some kind of monetary ability to, if you want to print something, but it's crowdfund or whatever. Anyway, it doesn't, there are a huge amount of roadblocks to being able to be creative, but I want to make sure that young people and whoever's interested, they can navigate that world based off of the experiences that I've had, or the people that I'm working alongside with who, and there's some things in the works that we'll be able to talk about soon. I'll be able to talk about soon. You'll find out about soon for sure. And one of the great things about living in Ontario is we have a really vibrant comic book community, and there's so many of us that are not only working in the industry at all different levels of whether it's Marvel, DC, or more medium-sized publisher, or working in the book world like HarperCollins, or animation, and we just have a really vibrant community. And for the most part, most of us are pretty willing to share and be supportive of each other, regardless of what level you're at. That's something I've always been very appreciative of since I've moved here over 20 years ago. And it was something I'd been looking for. And now that I'm, I guess, been doing this for a while, I can like pay it forward, as I said, and help people that are just starting out on their journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I think you're right. Like, one thing that I think for me about like just the comics community in the area that sort of blew me away, like when I started reading comics, it was, well, I'd gotten graphic novels prior, like in sort of my midway through my journey through high school. But in 2011 is when I started collecting floppies and really got into it. And even like my first con, to go up to the various artists, like from the major guys, right? Like Tony Daniel, who was the person I was super interested in, Greg Capullo, people working on Batman, basically. Even they were super nice to talk to. But as I've gone, time and time again to different cons throughout the years, it's the insane like friendliness of the indie creators has always been a joy. Just to be able to even just like talk, not even necessarily skill share, but then from the tidbits I've gathered from the tabling experience, it's just really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we've there's been a fair bit of creators that are teachers, especially like I went to a school in Toronto years ago, and some of the teachers that I had there, I still connect with today, and they're still teaching. Many of them are still teaching, and a lot of the lessons I learned were through them, right? I mean, Ty Templeton is one that comes off the top of my head. David Ross, Richard Pace, they were really instrumental, I think, in helping me to form as a comic book creative. I'd also had experience as a graphic artist prior to that, so I feel by the time I met them, I was able to really utilize a lot of what they were teaching, I think, and I knew what to do with it, right, for the most part. So it was a really good time for me to meet them and have them as my teacher. Yeah.
That's so cool. So one thing I've got to mention, we've been at this for almost 20 minutes exactly now. And other than some probing questions and then comments I've had, you've pretty well, been like explaining what you do, who you are, consistently, legibly, understandably, well-spoken. And you're also just like, out of nowhere whipping out this drawing here. I think one thing I'm fascinated by is that capacity to like multitask. And I get, I don't know, neurologically maybe it's like different parts of the brain or whatever. But I've seen so many artists now do this. Do you find that because you draw so often, it's just sort of first nature, or is that like a developed thing that lets you, listen to me ramble on, understand it, respond to it, plus draw?
So first of all, from what I've learned, we can't actually, as much as it looks like we're multitasking, people can't really multitask in the way that we think we do. It's more of like 1 second, listen, 1 second, draw, 1 second, listen, 1 second, draw. But I think it's more interpreting or extrapolation. It's like, I'm able to take enough of what you're saying and be able to have a conversation with you while I'm doing. So you see, I had to stop for a moment
exactly.
there,
to your point, yeah.
But this is one of those things where there is a skill to doing this. And I remember back when I was in school and you'd get in trouble with a teacher who'd be like, you're not supposed to be doodling while you're, in my class. And I'd be like, but I can understand what you're saying. Like, I can tell you. And it's like, I don't care. It's like, you're not allowed to chew gum. You're not allowed to wear a hat. You're not allowed to doodle while you are. Because I think to some people, I'm not making eye contact. And therefore, there's a social construct that says that if to be respectful, you have to look at somebody while they're talking to you. And I get that. I too understand. But it doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. And so I've always, I've always told people, like, if you're okay with me drawing, I hear what you're saying. I'm listening to you. I can have a conversation with you. I just not giving you maybe 100% of my attention. But I mean, most people, I can't say that most people give 100% of their attention anyway, because they may be looking you straight in the eye, but they're thinking, did I turn the stove off? Or what do I want to, most of the time it's people going, what do I want to say back to this person? So they're not listening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just maybe being a little bit more honest about it. I'm like, I'm not looking at you. I can hear you mostly. I am just also doing something else. To your question, the part of it about how like functioning I am in doing this, like, is this like a some kind of skill? Is this something like a talent? I don't think it's a talent. I think most artists can do this to a degree. I think the skill comes into, so I'm doodling right now, and because I don't have a preconceived idea of what this should be, I think I'm letting some of my intuition take over, and that could be because I've done a lot of this kind of stuff before. So I'm just using some of that, like my library, my mind's eye library is kind of coming into play here and going, I know what a tree looks like a log of a tree from a swamp, so I can kind of draw that without thinking about it too much. The other part of this is that because this is like part of the brush is doing some of the work, I'm letting the brush create some really fun shapes that are giving me ideas. It's almost like I'm using it as reference. I'm not using any reference. I don't have like anything in front of me. And that's not, sometimes I do. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying in this situation, I'm purely doodling. So I do have, in regards to what I'm drawing, part of it is I know how to draw people's faces. I have somewhat a good idea of how light works on somebody's face. The other part of doodling, and this is what I try to tell people as to why it's such a great tool, is when you doodle and you don't have a preconceived idea of what you're going to create, sometimes you get these amazing ideas, some amazing creatures or people or shapes or designs that come from it by just letting the subconscious, letting your hand and eye kind of just do something without thinking about it. And that is really magical. And that's really what's happening here. I couldn't tell you that I would have ever in a million years thought of this composition where like there's like some kind of, I don't know, like a little mini alligator on top of some dude's head as he's what I'm seeing, and maybe what you're seeing are different things, but I'm like seeing somebody in like a swamp going through the water, and he's got this like creature on the top of his head as he's going through the water, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I'm seeing this. Whether the viewer is seeing the same thing, I don't know. If I were to color this, it would probably be able to direct somebody's eyes a little bit more and have them fill in the blanks a little bit easier. But I enjoy it. It doesn't really matter to me if somebody is like looking at that going, well, I have no idea what you're drawing, dude. For me, this is just as like a fun, just a relaxing time to let my creativity be as open as possible. And there's actually some, to my point of some great ideas can come from doing this. You mentioned Howard earlier. Howard and I, is that me? Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Turn that off. Howard and I actually were having a conversation. Let me back up a little further. I was teaching a student online, and we were talking about Frank Miller and how, like think of Sin City, where it's almost like the whole page is almost black with like white etched out, right? So he was talking about that. I'm like, well, kind of like this, and I was showing him what what I'm showing you here, where I pretty much blacked out a page and started etching white out.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing that in class, and then this like really cool astronaut like character came about from it. And then I didn't finish it with my student. We doodle for 20 minutes or so, and then we get to our.
Oh, okay.
But afterwards, I was talking to Howard online, and I wanted to continue drawing it. And as I said to you earlier, I can listen to what he's saying and still draw. So he's watching me doodle, because I sometimes share my screen. And he was like, what is that? And his mind started, he's watching me carve out this, whatever this is. And he was just like, oh, this is something here. And you can tell, like, he was really enthralled by what was happening, what was unfolding in front of him. And ideas started percolating. And he's like, what if this is this? I'm like, ooh, that's a really good idea. And what if we do this with it? So before you know it, we've just gone back and forth and created a cool little story from a doodle that I had absolutely no idea, other than the fact that I was kind of going with like a Frank Miller process, kind of. I mean, I don't know if that's how he does it, but that's kind of what I was emulating, but I didn't know what I was doing ahead of time. And so it's a really powerful thing. I think that I try to doodle, every day. I can't say I do every day, but I find that if I feel like I'm not going to, if I need to get started and I'm having a really hard time starting, doodling is a great way to do that, because as I said earlier, it kind of warms you up, and then you can get into the day. I recommend it for anybody that's like doing anything really. If you just like doodle on a page for like 20 minutes where you're just trying to figure out what you want to do for the day, or you're procrastinating a little bit, I do think it really helps you to be accomplishing something really. And then you can, maybe you never use the thing. Most of us who doodle may not do anything with the doodles themselves, but at least maybe it gets you've accomplished one thing, and now you can go on to that next thing that you've been putting off, right? And
exactly.
That's the power. That's one of the powers of doodling.
I dig it. I like it. Now, Keith, one thing I gotta ask, because I'm, as someone who I'll edit photography or photos or images from the net to suit my purpose as well, video editing for people. I'm familiar with Photoshop to a degree. However, this end of it, the way that you're using it is just way over my head. So in your, I forget what the panel's called, but where you've got your your layers and stuff, you've got one, two, three. I'm gonna say 4 layers that I could see some effects applied to one. You've got some layer in there. Now I'm assuming maybe this is some stuff from like previous stuff you've done, but like the black background that you have, for instance, in this. How did you go about setting that up so that if someone wanted to draw in this way, they could just do that?
Okay, so you're asking about my workspace.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, if I had to be honest with you, some of the way I have things laid out, like the character and my properties, I don't know why I have it up that way. Character essence, I do use that. I will go through and use the library of color here. I do go through that quite often. On the other side, where you have like the bottom there, you have a way of making some smaller, larger. I'll use that. You could also move it around.
Good old pan, yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got my brushes, as you can see, the True Grit Texture Supply TGTS, right? So I've got all those right there for me to use. And then above that, I have my layer, essentially how I create a template for drawing something like a comic book page. I have a couple of different sizes that I work in. This one's like roughly 11 by 17. It's like 10 point whatever by 15.
Yeah.
Comic book size. And then if I were to show you my guides, you can see where there would be trim and where you would have like where I would put in text and stuff like that. So this is like the actual file itself is for creating a comic book page. The what you would see in the layer part of it. In the layer itself, there's not really too many things going on here. I've gotten it down to bare bones because I've done this so long that I know what I need.
Yeah.
So, like for example, sometimes I'll use the rule of thirds. If I'm trying to figure out a composition, I don't use that too often. I can probably get rid of that if I didn't want it there. My illustration copyright is below that. I have to update it because it's 2024 now. Right after that, what the actual layer that I'm working on here, it's just called layer 1. It's all it is just a simple layer.
It's literally just a layer. Cool.
Just a single layer, right? So if I were to do here, you can watch me do it all over again on a new layer, just blacken it out, leaving a bit of little white in there, and then I can start to delete from that. So let me go back to this. Below that, I have an adjustment layer that I have set with a hue saturation specifically for like blue lining, except I like orange.
Cool.
And a situation like this, if I were to ink on top of this, let's say I was like, okay, this is what I would consider to be my rough pencil, this orange. I would probably fade it down quite a bit because it's just, like that. And then I would draw on top of it. Bring the size of the line down. And, I would go in and probably zoom in so I could see what I'm actually drawing a little bit more. All right. I wouldn't necessarily do it in that way with this particular drawing, but just to give people an idea of.
Yeah.
If I were
and that would be kind of your refined lines, which would then go on to be inked and colored and all these other things.
Or I may it's possible. It just depends. Like I may actually go from this may be my inks. It just depends on, like the beauty of what I'm doing here is that I don't want to lose some of the energy here. So going into the line, making it too precise kind of defeats some of the purpose of some of these really cool mistakes I'm creating with the brush. So I may actually go in, this may be directly inked. Or, I mean, the beauty of this is, technically speaking, I can just refine it from here if I wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I can actually I can just kind of sculpt this in and out and be like, okay, this is going to be the finished drawing. I'm not technically, you can consider this both the rough pencil, the refined pencil, and the inked all in one if you wanted to look at it a certain way. And I've just skipped a bunch of steps to get there, right? That's just dependent on how I'm feeling about the drawing. If I feel I'm trying to get more like that, where I'm letting some of the roughness of it stay from into the end, because I think there's something to be said about letting, as I said, letting the audience, the viewer, kind of fill in the blanks or see things. There's happy little mistakes that I may lose if I were to like refine it too much, and I want to keep that in there. So yeah, I'm trying to go with this more approach like this, just because I think there's something more exciting. It's a little bit scarier, so that means it's pretty exciting.
Good.
And then yeah, below that I have perspective.
Oh, right on.
Like a grid that I just use for whenever I'm drawing lines.
Oh, that's so cool.
Whatever. Yeah, and then I'll multiply that if I want to have multiple point perspective, right? And then there's my background, which, that way I have a white background. And then if I'm ever showing this to a client, can't really see it right now, but basically I have like a little watermark that I can use for where is it? I know why, because it's on multiple. There we go. Yeah, so my name, essentially a little watermark there. And of course there's ways to do that digitally as well. I haven't changed some of these things for like over a decade. I just kept it in my template. And then you're probably wondering how I'm magically able to like do some of the sizing and erasing and stuff. So I have a Wacom Cintiq that has this little it's like a little remote. It's not like a hotkey button.
That's cool.
From yeah. So I think in the newest one they've got rid of this, but you can actually purchase it separately. It can't.
Oh, okay.
But I programmed a whole bunch of cool little buttons or cool little shortcuts that I use all the time. And this has taken me years to figure out like what are the things I like the most that I just want to be able to. So I'm a lefty, so I'm drawing with my left hand with this pen. So I'm working on a Cintiq, which is a pressure sensitive tablet. This one is like a 22 HD.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it 24? No, it's 24 HD. That's right. It's 24 HD. And
not unlike that one.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've got little buttons on here that allow for me to get brush or to do an eyedropper. There's an eraser in the back if I ever use that. But I also have a really cool. There's a way for you to. There's a clear function on when you're going on your layer or your modes in regards to like. I'll bring it down here.
Sure.
Here you have normal, dissolve behind clear.
Okay.
And I've actually created a little hot button for that clear. And clear essentially is an eraser. So one of the things that for years really bugged me, and sometimes you learn something in Photoshop like that you should have known years ago. And I never used the clear for anything. But about, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I was like, some of the brushes I have wouldn't erase well. I couldn't
Okay.
get them to erase. They just didn't have the functionality to erase. Some of them did. I couldn't figure out why that some did, some didn't. And I was like, God, there's got to be a way for me to erase with this kind of line, so that I'm not, so that I don't have to like go to actually find a separate eraser with the similar gritty line that would erase in the same way. I just wanted to,
Oh.
yeah. So in other words, if you think about brushes, they're essentially stamps.
Yeah.
And to get that, to erase the stamp, so if the stamp is like this, here, I'll use this here. So the stamp is this thing, right? I want to be able to erase with that kind of really cool. You've got, if I were to zoom this a little bit more here, you got this really cool toothy, almost like spatter. And I want to be able to erase this with the same spatter. How could I do that? Well, if you use clear, you can do that. And so I learned that when I was, sometimes you just get to a point, you're like, oh, this is so, I'm tired of doing this eraser this way. It's not working for me. There's got to be a better way to do it. And finally, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to Google this. And, finally, somebody posted a YouTube channel of like, if you want to use clear for an eraser, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, why didn't I ever know that? I mean, I've been using Photoshop for over 20 years. Maybe it's a function that's only been around for 5 or 10. I don't know. Maybe it's been around forever to be able to do it that way with brushes. But sometimes you think that you know everything, and then sometimes you're like, I know nothing, right? And that's how I feel with Photoshop sometimes. And so when I finally figured that out, I was like, oh, this is amazing. But now how can I do it in a way where I can use my hot button, like a hot button key, to do it? And so you just have to like program the clear as a in the menu. You can actually like create shortcuts for things. And I can't remember what the clear was shortcut wise. It may not have even existed, but I created one for it. And then once you've done that, then you can just program it into your into the remote, and then you now have a button for erasing. And instead of me going like this every time, because I just for whatever reason, when you turn this around to erase, it goes to, I don't know if there's a way for you. You could probably actually you can program, I imagine, the eraser in the same way. But I just find it's easier for me to, there's a little bit more, it's like kind of saves a step for me to just take my right finger and put it on this button. And then so I'm working, almost instantaneously. It's like, oh yeah. Right. And it just takes a little time to get used to, like your how much white you're taking off and black you're adding back in, and sometimes you trip it up and you have to like either draw it back in or undo or something. But anyway, so that's kind of a fun little thing that I learned to make what I like to do and the way I like to do it work better for me, right? Because that's really what this comes down to. I think my journey from being like a graphic artist to now is trying to lean more and more into the things that, ironically, and hopefully I'm using the word ironically, right? But the way that I some like years ago would create really cool, fun illustrations and not know how I did it. And it would be like, I don't know if it was just like, you just have like some kind of like a moment of clarity when you're creating something and you're like, oh my God, this is like the best thing I've ever done. And then the next day you're like, how did I do that? I find that there's like certain things I've done over the years where I've been like, I've just kept it super gritty and loose, and that's more me. I'm very organic. I don't really have like I'm not inclined to do things super clean. I'm a lefty. Mm-hmm. I always drag, smudge and stuff. That's why I work digitally. And then I think my style, the way I draw, I like I gravitate towards that looseness, but it's taken me years to get through that, because I've always thought I was supposed to be like super tight and have things look a certain way because that's what other people do. And I mean, you're always going to compare yourself with other people, especially when you're beginning. And then now that I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't really care as much. I want to do something that excites me, that scares me a bit, and this style does. And so and it just feels like it's something that's a little bit more me, more natural. And I've been doing it for years off and on, especially when you doodle. You just you're like, something weird kind of comes out of a doodle and you're like, I don't know how I just did that, right? Because I wasn't thinking about it. I just did it.
Yeah.
And that's what these drawings are for me, is using this brush, using this process. It all really, at the end of the day, it just more closely resembles the way I want to create.
I dig that. Like it's interesting because I hear all the time, and like I think, as you should, especially if you're someone who's learning, you hear all the time at cons or panels or whatever, what have you, where people are like, "Oh, how did you find your style? How did you come up with your look?" And the common response I hear is just draw everybody else, draw the people that draw the way that, or rather, try and draw the way that people draw who you like and their art that you like, and then out of that you sort of cobble together your own way. And to hear you like going through and being like, now I'm actually getting the materials, the software to be able to do exactly the physical thing you want it to do, or I suppose digital, but whatever, in the way that you like, even more so like fits that. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that, and I hear what you're saying when it's like, look at how other people do it and then figure out, like draw it in their way. And for sure I did that. Like, that is, John Buscema is one of those that I probably loved so much that not that I draw like him, but that I would want to draw like him. My sensibilities are probably like, just wanting to make things super dynamic and all that stuff. Will Eisner, another one that I really like. And the thing is, we lost.
I'm just gonna share something real quick,
okay.
just for the people's reference.
Gotcha. Okay. And I do think there is value to copying what other people that you really like, figure out how they're doing it, like break it down, put some kind of like a transparent type of paper, tracing paper over a page of John Buscema's and draw it and figure out how is he doing this. I mean, there's for sure a lot you can learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, if you are drawing that way, and no matter how hard you try to emulate it, it's not working for you, and you're just pulled in another direction. Like, maybe you're just like, I just love the super hyper realistic drawing of some of these artists, and I'm always doing things super cartoony, and no matter how hard I try, I can't get there. Well, maybe it's because there's something within you that the cartoony part of it just clicks with you better. So just take some of the stop like forcing it and just lean into it, right? And then the more you lean into it, the more, because I think part of it is at least with me, it's like I was afraid to draw in a way that I thought other people would go, oh, like that doesn't look like you took a lot of time to do it. It just looks like scribbles, which it is kind of. I don't know, like whatever. I just kind of thought people, again, you get these ideas in your head of what people think, and of course, most people don't care. Like, most people don't think about you that much anyway, right? They what you do, and they're like, oh, that's really cool, and you're like, oh, okay. What was I so afraid of? but that's what it is. It's fear. You're afraid of whatever it is that you think you should be. You're not being it. And then sometimes it takes life experience of lots of failure to go through, which is healthy. It's healthy to go through all that failure because you'll learn a lot from failure, to go through all that. And then you go, okay, you know what? Maybe it's time for me just to do what the thing I should be doing that's been something's been telling me to do it this whole time anyway. And I'm just going to do it. And, whatever happens. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like, well, I don't know if there's an audience for this kind of the way I'm drawing right now, but I don't care because you know what? I enjoy it. And I do care to a degree because I do think, I know there's people that appreciate it. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't care if like I don't get like this huge following from it, as long as, like people that I hopefully somebody out there is like, oh, that's really cool the way you're doing this. And I'm like, yeah. And what do you do? And how do you draw? Or what is it that you're getting out of this? Maybe I can learn, maybe you have a perspective on this that I wasn't seeing. Right. And so, but either way, it's just more of me trying to draw in a way that I think accesses the part of me that I've been trying to like push away. Right. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And just one more thing on that. We're almost out of time, but one more thing on that. I've always felt that I was like, I have a really, really hard time learning structure in regards to like the body and stuff. And I've tried, like I've practiced, and like I see artists who can like draw every muscle and every position, and I've read, like Dave Ross has a great book on imagining how to draw like figures in all different positions and stuff.
Oh,
I've read it and I've practiced it, and I still have a hard time doing it. But the funny thing is, I think it's in there somewhere because I've tried it. I've drawn it so many times. Because when I do this kind of stuff, when I'm doodling, or if I'm like letting the brush kind of make some of the shapes and things for me, I'm like, I knew how to draw this figure, and I didn't realize I knew how to draw this figure. How did it's been in me this whole time, but I've been approaching it in a different way. Where because I'm like, some people need to see the structure first, and then they can like build upon that. I think I'm the opposite. I like just like the gesture of it, the energy of it, and then I can from there I can build onto the gesture of it and figure it out from there. So I'm deconstructing it in a different direction. But for years, I would approach it I must build it in a very organized way first, because that's how I see other creators doing it. But I know that's not true. I know there's some creators that'll just scribble stuff out. They're doing what I'm doing, essentially. They're just doing it in their way. But I never saw it that way. I always saw it as like, oh, they have a real, they figured out the structure better than I have. So now I'm not really so worried about it. And, I can't say that my structure is the strongest element of my abilities. It's an area that I still do struggle with getting, the way that people move and stand and how the muscles work and all that kind of stuff in conjunction. I still struggle with that. I mean, I can envision in my head, but I still have issues with it for sure. But when I do it this way, it comes much easier. It took me years to once you as I said, you lean into it, you're like, oh, well, okay. Now I know it's there. I didn't realize it was there, but now I know it's there. And now I just have to see what I can create from it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's interesting too, because having friends who've gone through art school, my partner included, I've come to understand, especially like at the university or college level, there is such a stress on anatomy, figure, proportion, and I've always thought, if you're drawing something like from a medical textbook, sure, you need things to be proportionally like precise. Absolutely, you're teaching something, right? Like the heart or something. But I definitely also feel like there is something to be said about your approach to it, who a number of artists I've sort of seen and watched have this, where they would rather get the motion correct or the feeling correct and then build the anatomy around that, even if it's a little wrong because of it, as long as it conveys that emotion. And I think in art, if you're not getting across the emotion or the feeling, I don't think it matters how anatomically correct your arm is or your the movement of the body.
Yeah.
No,
it's true. It's just really, when you're telling storytelling, it's just a bunch of symbols that everybody looking at those symbols will go, I understand what your symbol is, right? And the how clear you make those symbols. You can make a perfect example is a smiley face, right? You can go from like just a very much like a circle with the line for the mouth and then 2 dots for the eyes, right? And then you can get more and more and more complicated from there. You can even actually probably go one step before with the smiley face where you don't even put the circle, right?
That's my move. Just
And so, but that's conveying, an idea that most people, when they look at it, they understand what it is, right? Is it perfect? Could there be a much more grammatic or anatomically correct kind of, mouth and face smiling? Yeah, of course. But you're able to convey the same thing in a much less amount of time in some ways. In other ways, it could take you very long to figure out how to minimize that very simple symbol. It's not simple doesn't necessarily mean less work, but either way, to your point, yes, if you can evoke some kind of through a symbol, some kind of emotion, some kind of message, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's understood by the viewer, and that a lot of times is through trial and error, though, because you don't know until they read it and they go, this is supposed to be what the story is. And you're like, yeah, you got it. But that's why I do tell people, though, when you look at the way kids draw, they draw like stick figures and stuff. And what they're, a lot of times you're like, I know what you're drawing. Like, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So you can, I think inherently we do know how to do these messages. I think as we get older, we overcomplicate and lose some of that. We become more rigid, lose some of that elasticity with creativity. And just to bring it back, because we're coming on the hour, that's how doodling works. It takes away that rigidity and gives you the elasticity to be more imaginative. So
I love it. That is a great way to tie that back. Keith, I cannot call this a doodle. That is an illustration, and it's wonderful. And I love this little lizard guy. Quick shout out. Paul gave us another comment. Not many illustrators are capable of creating as freely and spontaneously as Keith. He's a genuine artist. Thank you very much for the entertaining show, Konrad. Well, Paul, thank you kindly, sir.
You.
And yeah, Keith, this was fun. Absolutely. I think we should do this again. That just looks awesome. And yeah, I normally I would have questions to sort of finish out a show, but in this case, I think what I guess I'll ask is, what would you recommend to help someone get started in shaking off that fear of making art? What would be like a quick, easy thing that they might be able to do?
Doodle.
Love it. Perfect. For the folks watching now or in the future, thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Go follow Keith. His Instagram is scrolling across the screen. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2. Collect